As promised earlier, we are joined by former Georgia quarterback David Greene, who is down in the Atlanta Gwinnett area. David, how you doing?
George, doing good, buddy. How about yourself?
Doing good. It's good to talk to you.
I know I hadn't talked to you in a while. I hadn't seen you in a while, so it's good to catch up.
Hey, I want to relive a moment for you of Tennessee, Georgia glory. It was hard for me to believe when we went back October of 2001. Let me just say for the viewers and the listeners, this is the hobnail boot touchdown.
And there's a touchdown! Touchdown! My God, a touchdown! We threw it to Haynes. My God Almighty! Did you see what he did? We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose.
The hobnail boot. Never heard of one before that.
Okay, so I remember when you and I had lunch that day, I asked you, what the hell is a hobnail boot? And you had no idea.
No idea either. No, but that's part of what makes what made Larry Munson so awesome. I mean, you look at the fact that you could just tell he was like any other fan out there that was just elated at the time, and you could tell what he was saying was not scripted. I don't even know if he even knew what he was saying in that moment, but he was obviously so excited that we were able to come back. Look, he had suffered a lot. I mean, he had suffered through so many seasons. I don't think we'd beaten Tennessee at Tennessee the 20 years before that. And so he was like a lot of Georgia fans that had suffered many years. So when we got that win, it was a lot of joy and a lot of frustration coming out for a lot of people.
How often does the hobnail boot get brought up to you?
Well, still a good bit. I mean, I think with most Georgia fans, they would say when they think about my career, they certainly think about that play as one of the biggest. Now, I would say that the play to Michael Johnson at Auburn was probably the biggest play because there was more on the line. I mean, it was the SEC, the SEC East was on the line. If we didn't win that game, we don't go to the championship. But certainly, you take the play, you give the circumstances, Coach Rick's first year, we're trying to get the program turned around. And then obviously Larry Munson's call, with it being one of the top handful of calls that go down in Georgia history. And given the nature, he's talking about hobnail boots and everything else. It was a cool moment. It's cool to be associated with that play.
Yeah. Did he ever say to you, hey, by the way, on your touchdown today, this is what I called it?
No. And I think I actually saw him on the bus after the game. And I can generally say, like, I don't really think he even knew what he was saying. And like I said, that's kind of what's so cool is it's not really scripted. He's just kind of being authentic at that time. And no, he never mentioned it. And if you've ever been around Larry, I mean, he was an interesting guy to begin with. And a pessimist. And that's the thing that drove me nuts.
Totally.
I've always been an optimistic guy by nature. And then you got Larry over there who was, here we go again.
This was totally empty.
It was totally Larry. And that used to drive me crazy.
David, he and my dad were big buddies. And they from his Vanderbilt days. And so I knew him growing up. And I can remember calling him. I had done a Georgia Tech Virginia game up in Charlottesville. This was 2006. He was, 83, 84 years old. And I'm listening all the way home on WSB out of Atlanta. And he still got it. Now, I know his eyes failed him somewhat at the end, but I remember I called him a couple of days later and I was like, I could only hope to be what you are at this age. He was amazing.
He was unbelievable. And, what a tough position to step into. And Scott Howard's just done a fantastic job. The voice of the Dogs, obviously, for a number of years now. But, nobody quite like Big Larry.
I want to run this by you. You didn't fall out of a turnip truck football wise. So you're sitting here watching Josh Heupel and what they're doing.
Sure.
What is the sauce that he's found that nobody seems to be able to stop?
Well, I think he's come up with a plan. Obviously he's got Hooker at quarterback. He's got these players believing that they can play. And I'll tell you, the majority of this game is mental. He's got this game plan where they got the up tempo, the plays, the offense that he's designed is working. They spread the field out and force you into these one-on-one matchups. That they've got some really good athletes, and they're winning a lot of those battles. And when you try to play coverage, they've shown they can run the ball, and when you try to bring pressure, they show they can beat you in those one-on-one matchups. And the defense is coming around and playing good enough to where they can win ball games. And so I think what he's done is he's shown that the players have bought into his game plan. They're having success, and now they've got the confidence. And certainly the fan base has been starving for a while. And look, Neyland Stadium is one of the toughest places to play. I mean, when that team is good, I mean, it is rocking in there. So there's a lot of things going in the right direction. I've got some good buddies that are Tennessee fans, and I said it last year. I said, Tennessee's got their coach. They finally hit the right one. You could tell that they had a plan. They were sticking to it. And I could tell even last year, I didn't know they were going to be this good this quick, but I could tell last year that they were on the right track.
David, it got out earlier this morning about Nolan Smith out for the year.
Yeah.
What does that do to Georgia defensively and specifically in this game?
Well, a couple of things. One, I would say from a leadership standpoint, it's a killer. I mean, he's one of those guys that was not afraid to hold everyone accountable, get in somebody's face if they needed to. I think we miss his leadership as much as anything. From our defense, it's a killer. I mean, we're not great right now with sacks to begin with. We've been pretty good with pressure, but you take someone who's been around that long, I would say he's like a pro's pro. Of course, he's not playing pro ball yet, but I mean, he's a guy that plays the game the right way. He leads the right way. Tremendous player for us. It is going to hurt us, and we're taking a defensive front that has not been able to produce a lot of sacks, and you're taking one of our best guys out. And there's no question it's going to hurt. Now, look, Georgia does have a lot of depth. There's a lot of good players that get a chance to prove themselves and step up. But not having Nolan, certainly it is going to hurt us.
Do you look for anything out of Kirby, out of the norm defensively, that we're going to show them some things they haven't seen kind of mentality?
I mean, look, I'm sure he's going to be very aware of his tendencies that he's shown to this point, and he's not going to try to be too predictable. The one thing that I think you cannot allow, which Alabama seemed to do, is decide to play coverage, allow, only rush 3, drop 8, and expect to stop their passing game. I think they proved against Alabama he can fit it in tight spaces. I think you got to be committed to, getting pressure on him and making him throw these tough passes and make him beat you in these one-on-one matchups. Look, he's not easy to stop. Clearly, nobody's really been able to do it. But if you can get pressure on a quarterback and not allow him to stand in a clean pocket, it certainly makes things a lot harder. And I think Alabama, looking back on it, they would probably go, man, I probably wish we wouldn't have played coverage as much as they did, and try to get a little more pressure on them.
Tell me a little bit about Stetson Bennett, because it's almost like a made-for movie. Nobody wanted him, goes to JUCO for a while, he's 4th string, and suddenly he's good enough to win a national title, and you're like, that's a movie.
It really is. And we knew he was good a while back. I mean, the year they went to the national championship with Jake Fromm, there used to be talks out of Athens that, hey, this scout team quarterback, back when Roquan and those guys were still here, there was a lot of talks from those defensive guys said, hey, this Stetson Bennett is shredding that starting defense, which is a really good defense. I think Kirby learned only early on that, this kid's a great competitor. They knew not only could he throw, he could run the ball, which I think Kirby's talked about time and time again, how much he enjoys being able to use Stetson's legs, to hurt a defense. And then when he finally got his opportunity, look, I don't think he was ever supposed to be the guy. But when he got a shot, he proved that he could do it. He could handle the moment, that he was a great competitor. Was it always perfect? No. And was he playing with the same poker chips as everyone else? The answer is no. I mean, he was playing in it. If he would have really messed up bad at any time throughout his starting career, they would have probably yanked him pretty quick. But he played really well. And so much so that, there's 5 stars that are sitting on the bench, and he's the guy that's leading the team and led them to a national championship last year. And even through, some moments that seemed a little hairy, he had obviously proved himself enough to the offensive staff and to Kirby, where they felt like he gave him the best chance to win. And going into this season, it's amazing with him getting, a full off season of the reps, just how much better he's gotten in that whole timing with the offense. How much better it's gotten.
David, you got 2 quarterbacks that are both 25 years old. How big an advantage is that for them?
It's wild you say that, George, because I'm sitting here. I didn't realize they were that old until this past week. I think of the Georgia-Florida game. They said, Stetson Bennett just turned 25. I'm thinking, my goodness. I mean, George, I graduated high school when I was 17.
Right.
I did redshirt. I think I finished Georgia when I was 21 or 22. But it's becoming more and more common where you get guys in high school that are coming out later and later so they can be a little more developed. You got guys that are 19 years old when they're stepping into college. And I think that shows that's a big answer where people are going, hey, these kids are coming out of high school, ready to play college ball. I think the answer is, yeah, it's because they're 19, 20 years old when they're coming out of high school. But that certainly helps from a maturity standpoint. I think it clearly shows that they're on a path. They see themselves as playing that sport because there's not too many 25-year-old kids that are still in college unless you failed a number of times or took a break and come back.
I would have been a candidate.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting there thinking, I got a lot of buddies that, took the 7-year plan, but not the 7-year plan on purpose.
Exactly. So I want to toss this theory at you, and this is me conjuring up some Atlanta Braves stuff here. No, they didn't win it again, but in the back of their minds was sort of this, yeah, we didn't win it, but it's not as bad because we won it all a year ago. How do you think Kirby Smart is trying to get around that kind of mental stuff for a team that did win it a year ago?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm hoping what's taking place is the guys are every bit as hungry, or if not hungrier than they were last year. And I think that's what it comes down to. I think Stetson's decision to come back was huge. I think that showed to me because everyone knows that Stetson last year could have sailed off into the sunset and they could have written a movie about it. And he could have been one of the greatest players ever to play at Georgia. He brought him back a national championship and everything would have been great. Stetson was clearly hungry to keep playing ball and hungry to try to take Georgia back to a national championship. So there's a lot of things. Look, winning national, there's so many things that stars that got to line up for that to happen. And what you hope for as a player to coach is that you have a group of guys that are hungry and are hungrier to be great than they even were last year. And that's really what you're hoping for, where they're not really focused on, we're going to win a national championship. How can I get better today? And if you can do that time and time again, chances are you're going to get better. And I know they say it sounds cliche, it's about, talking about the process, but look, in this game of football, there's so many things outside of your control as an individual. You got so many other guys you're depending on to do their jobs, and you really got to focus on just doing your part and trying to get better at doing your part. And hopefully you got enough guys in that locker room that are rowing in the same direction with you.
Okay, last thing. Give me the David Greene crystal ball of how this turns out Saturday.
Lord, I wish I know. And George, I tell you, one thing I've learned is right when you think you got it figured out, you got no idea. I'll I'll say this. Look, I think it's really going to come down to, George, it's going to come down to turnovers. Whoever turns the ball over the most, I think, is going to lose the football game. Do I think Tennessee can score on Georgia? Absolutely. Do I think Georgia can score on Tennessee? Absolutely. I think it's going to come down to who doesn't turn the ball over, who plays the cleanest game, who's not getting stupid penalties, and ultimately, I mean, I think it's going to be a big battle. I do give the edge to Georgia. I think the home field advantage does matter in this game. I'm glad we're not playing in Tennessee. I think with the momentum they've got up there in Knoxville right now, just makes things a little bit tougher. So I'm glad we're playing in Athens. I love the fact that Tennessee is as hot as they are right now. They're hottest team in football. Georgia's proven. I mean, look, we had 3 or 4 turnovers against Florida and still beat them by 20 plus points. It goes to show Georgia's a very, very good football team as well. It's going to be one of those epic weekends in Athens. I can't wait.